Welcome, welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Okay, while we wait for everybody to join us, we'll give them a couple minutes. We do have some light housekeeping here on the screen for you. You are with us for the next 60 minutes. We hope you'll give us your time. We're thankful for the time that you are taking to be here with us today. Just so you are all aware, this meeting is being recorded and the slides will be sent out afterwards. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. The poll is now live in there as well. So if you want to take a second to answer that, that's very helpful. And then if you are part of the CMMC, there you are. If you're a part of the PMP group, you will have a PDU here at the end of the call for you to take advantage of as well. I think, Carrie, you actually took over by sharing my screen somehow. It's fine. I won't fight you. If you're just joining us, there is a poll in the chat if you want to go ahead and take that poll for us. The question is simply, where are you in your CMMC journey? And then Carrie, just a quick housekeeping thing. When you're sharing the poll, for some reason, it keeps sharing the screen to viewers rather than for you, but it's no issue. We have to toggle back and forth during polls. Not a big deal. Just want to let you know in case there was something different you had to do on your end. All right, we'll give it here another minute and then we will get started. Could we make sure James is allowed in? He just messaged he wasn't able to get into the meeting. If you're just joining, there are a couple housekeeping things here on the screen for you. This is a panel discussion with some Q&A at the end. We are recording, so slides and the recording will be sent afterwards. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll try to get to them. And if you are part of the PMP folder, if you have a PMP and you're doing this for PMI PDUs, we do have a claim code that will be shown at the end of our session. So thank you all so much for joining. You are with us here at the CMMC during the pause, what contractors at every stage are doing now. And this is hosted by Alluvionic. To get us started, we want to give you a quick agenda just so you know where we're going today. The questions are, where everyone is right now. So we'll have a quick poll, a word on who we are, talk about the phase 2 pause, just really quickly what it means, some highlights of what we've been seeing here in the field, our panel conversation, some of your questions, and then, how to spend the pause well. So thank you again for sticking with us. Who we are. Here at Alluvionic, we are a project management and quality assurance firm that guides defense contractors through CMMC readiness, and we keep them ready. Some of the things that we do are gap assessments, SSP, and POEM development, evidence packages built to hold up under C3PAO or DIPCAC reviews. We have a lot of trust in our product and what we give because we do a lot of project-led execution. So we have a certified project manager run every effort so compliance doesn't have to wait on IT. Our mock assessments, we practice interviews, evidence walkthroughs, things of that nature. I would invite you to visit us on alluvionic.com if you want to learn more about, what else we do outside of CMMC. But today that is our focus. And specifically this session is about what the phase 2 pause actually changes for our industry and what that means for us and what contractors like you are deciding to do now. So if you haven't yet, just go ahead and finish up that poll. We're going to move on to kind of meet the panelists here. I am your moderator. My name is Seni LeBron. I am I'm on the commercial PD team. I'm also a project manager and I work here at Alluvionic. I work with defense contractors every day, helping them get CMMC ready and stay compliant. My job for the next hour is just to keep it real with you all. We're not going to get too deep into the DFARs and the clauses and all that, but we are just open and honest and have a nice conversation about what's going on today. I am joined by my colleague, Dave Sullivan, our cybersecurity and IT operations manager here at Alluvionic, and he is a certified CMMC assessor. I'm also joined by James Castellano from Southeast Aerospace. He is the IT director there, and his company recently was CMMC L2 certified just in June, right before the pause. I'm also joined by Kevin Jewell. He is the director of the industrial group at GBA Builders, who's about 60 to 70% of the way through the remediation process. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this afternoon. We are very delighted and happy to be able to talk to you about the pause and what that's meant for your company. So thank you for taking the time. Before we jump too far in, I want to make sure we baseline and we are all aware of what the pause is, right? The elephant in the room. So the DOW or the DOD paused phase 2 for 60 days. The November 10 third-party assessment, the mandate, that's frozen essentially, with the task force recommendation expected mid-September. What does that actually mean, right? So on July 13th, the DOD, the CIO, Kristen Davies, paused CMMC phase 2 rollout requirements for 60 days. So essentially freezing the November 10th mandate that everybody had to be third-party assessed. So news and recommendations expected to come out by mid-September. We're all very hopeful that that is going to be the case. So here's what hasn't paused, right? The actual compliance. The mandate for the gate that says an accredited C3PAO has to validate your CMMC Level 2 certification, that's the pause. The actual compliance that sits beneath it has not been paused, right? So everything under NIST 800-171 still applies today. Your DFARS clauses that you have on your contracts, your 7012, your 7019, your 7020, those are still in your contracts and you are still liable and required to uphold those. So just because the pause has happened does not pause self-attestation. So that is still required. So you'll have to go into that supplier performance risk system and put in your compliance number there. And it still carries the same legal weight as it always did. So nothing there has changed, right? One of the things I like to pause on, if you will, a pause on verification without pause on obligation actually raises your exposure and in a very specific way because you don't have anybody looking and checking and keeping you accountable. So the only person responsible for what you're self-reporting is you. So you're giving the government a representation based on your controls and the way that you've perceived them. So just keep in mind, false claims acts right now, they have not slowed down. So if anything, the period right now where nobody is checking is the period where you want to be as accurate as possible because you're claiming that you're self-attesting that you are compliant. So the biggest question we should be asking ourselves right now is what's the highest value thing to do with the time we didn't expect to have rather than should we keep going or should we stop? So on the screen here, I just have a QR code. If you want to take this now, you're welcome to use your phone and just kind of scan that and save it for later. It is an invitation to join us for 20 minutes on a one-on-one to know what you can be doing for the highest value thing while you're waiting. In the meantime, this again, if you've just begun CMMC preparation, this is just breathing room. If you're in it today, protect that momentum, keep doing what you're doing, whatever you've paid for, keep that investment strong. If you're going to defer anything, defer the assessment, not the actual work. And if you're already certified, congrats to you. You are in the strongest position. Right now, the game is to stay compliant, right? Don't let any of that scope creep happen. And even though focus might shift, sustainment and affirmations and all that, we need to make sure that our compliance stays, where it should be. So we're going to move and listen and hear from our panel because they're in this today. There are some kind of funny moments here that I want to share with you guys of some of the emails that we've received when we announced that, the pause. If they have any questions for us, we reached out to as many of our clients as we could. And here's a couple little sneak peeks of what they said before we jump into the panel. Let me just show these to you. So I've highlighted a couple here. One of the ones here right now, I think we're only interested in the elements of CMMC that enhance or bring our cybersecurity up to snuff. So that's one person's kind of take on it. Another one here. I'll be honest, when so-and-so and I heard about the DoD suspending the CMMC Phase II requirements, we hugged. What a relief. And then we have another one here. It says, for now, we're going to hold off planning or implementing any further CMMC requirements until we see what the task force decides upon. And then I like this one as well. I agree we should move forward as if nothing has changed on the government side. Requirements are the same, just third party is up in the air. I suspect it will be delayed, but ultimately still required. I suspect that any of you and all of you that are on this call could see yourself in one of these responses. And the one that kind of like pulled on me was like, we hugged, what a relief. Like CMMC it seems like just security and just compliance, right? But this is like a huge weight on people's business. This is their financial investments. This is time, this is resource, energies. So like just to really understand that this is not just some checkbox that you're filling out at work. Like it's a serious investment. Like people are hugging over it. Like the fact that, I got that response, like I captured that really quickly and I'm like, oof, we need to make sure we hit on that because, we're here for you. We get it. This is not just about, a business decision. Like there's a lot of emotion that weighs on it. We understand that here at Luvionics. So just want to bring light to that. So let's meet our panelists. With us, we have Kevin. He is from GBA Builders. His company, actually, Kevin, I'm going to ask you. Yeah, that still kind of sounds a little bossy, but if you wouldn't mind going ahead and just telling us about yourself and your company, we'd really appreciate that.
Sure. My name is Kevin Jewell. I'm a professional engineer with GBA. I've been with GBA for 21 years. I started off as an intern and worked my way up to being the director of the industrial group at GBA, which the industrial group, we do some federal work, a lot of work at Army ammunition plants, things like that. And I'd say one of the complicated things about our company that we really needed Alluvionics help with is we have both architecture and engineering, and then we also have a construction team in-house too. And from what we found, there wasn't a lot of firms like us that had gotten assistance from a company like Alluvionic, and really Alluvionic has been fantastic with being able to customize their services for exactly what we needed, which is exactly why we hired them, and they have been everything they promised to be. So just want to throw that in there real quick.
We didn't pay for any of that. So
No,
thank you, Kevin. Awesome. And so where his views matter today, we're going to ask him, advice peer-to-peer. Should they keep going? Should they pause? The leadership conversation. I want to know the nitty-gritty, like what happened in the office when he was like, hey, this is paused. What do we do with the money, right? The real cost and the risk of stopping now. So we're going to ask him those questions in a few minutes here. We're also joined by James Castellano. If James wouldn't mind coming off mute and introducing himself and his company, I'd appreciate that.
Yes. Can you hear me? Am I on mute right now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so as Cindy said, I'm the IT director here at Southeast Aerospace. I've been with the company for a little over 20 years, and I'm in charge of all aspects of IT from hardware, software, networking, user support, and now CMMC Level 2 certification and continued compliance. So like probably many of you, the weight of certification was actually reluctantly placed on my shoulders. So our CMMC journey actually started around 2019 when I first heard of NIST. We started getting primes asking us about our ESPER score, about NIST compliance and so forth. And so I really didn't know what that was. I did a little research into that, ended up setting up a small enclave in-house, a segregated network, just enough to sort of satisfy the requirements. Nothing extensive, but even the documentation standpoint, it was just a, real quick SSP and so forth. But it wasn't until like last year that our primes were really starting to ask about certification. Then I started hearing about this mandate that was coming up, at the end of 2025, and then of course the C3PAO certification at the end of 2026. So at that point, I just started to, we weren't really handling any CUI at that point, but since our primes were starting to ask about it, one of our customers was using Prevail, which we then ended up adopting. So I went headlong into the process mid to end of 2025. It was very strenuous, very difficult. Wasn't aware of really how much it required and what it really took to reach certification and compliance. Again, as was expressed, Luvionic was very helpful in everything we tried to do and what we were implementing. And we did complete our assessment in June, as Sandy mentioned. We officially received, funnily enough, our certification on July 10th. And then 3 days later, the DOW made the announcement. So it was bittersweet, but after some time to process the whole situation, I do feel good at where we are now and definitely prepared for whatever the decision becomes in the future.
Perfect. Thank you so much, James. I really appreciate it. And we're going to discuss with him today, what did he tell a company that just decided to wait? And then life after certification, like what primes and customers say now, and what he wishes he knew then when he started out, right? So what he's learned. And then we have Dave Sullivan. He is on our cybersecurity and IT team, and I'll let Dave just talk a little bit about his experience and what he does here.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. Good afternoon, everybody. So Dave Sullivan, as she mentioned, I am the cybersecurity and IT operations manager here at Alivionic, and I have been working within the CMMC space for a little over 6 years now. So I've been doing a lot of prep work with companies of all different sizes and fields, manufacturing, technology, software development. Worked with companies who want the entire organization to be compliant, which is thousands of users to hundreds, to setting up separate enclaves for organizations, to small businesses where it's a husband and wife working out of the basement of their house doing government contracts. And even one of my funnest projects was a individual who did landscaping on government sites, right? Who needed to be compliant with CMMC Level 1, right? Because he did have federal contract information. So I've seen many different aspects of the program and the environment and the industry. I did recently attain my CMMC Certified Assessor certification, which has changed my mindset slightly in working into these prep type clients and work. But I actually did help both GBA and Southeast Aerospace through their certification and compliance journey with Alivionic. So happy to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you again so much. And so some of the questions we'll ask him are, what are the highest value, lowest cost work that we can be doing during the pause? And then the mistake that contractors are making by misreading what the pause means. And then, like he mentioned, he is a CCA now. So what that changes for a team when they have him, or for a client once the team has him. All right, let's go on here. So we are ready for our panel. The first question is to Dave. The question is, what's the highest value, lowest cost work a contractor can do during the pause?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that I would recommend is first of all understanding what has changed, what has not changed. So Senny already did a really good job of going into detail on that. But the next thing is evaluating your DFARS clauses and what contracts have those DFARS clauses. So what I a lot of times is companies will have the DFAR 7012 clause, but they're not actually meeting all the requirements within it, right? So the DFAR 7012 clause hasn't changed. That hasn't gone away. We still have to be compliant with everything there. And at a high level, what we need to do is have a accurate SPRS score, right? Input in the system in the correct place in SPRS, right? So it's not CMMC section, it's within the NIST 171 section of SPRS. And secondly is the actual cyber incident reporting portion of the DFARS clause. So a lot of times, not a lot of times, but sometimes companies overlook that portion of it. So, uh, you know, reevaluating whether you have met those requirements. Do you have a medium assurance certificate? Do you know how to report cyber incidents? Do you know what systems within your environment are actually part of that DFARS clause to know if you do have a cyber incident, right? Is it applicable? Do you need to report it within that 72-hour window that is written within the DFARS clause right now? And then the last piece of that is log retention for 90 days after an incident occurred. So being aware of that, knowing what clauses you have, what contracts you have that clause, so then you know what personnel, what data, what laptops, what CUI machines you have in that scope is vitally important, because DIBCAC, is not slowing down their assessment of
Their
organizations,
audits, yeah.
even outside of CMMC, right? So that there have been a number of organizations that we've worked with, that contacted us after they had DIBCAC actually perform an audit on them and found a few things that they were out of compliance on, right? So those requirements haven't changed, and make sure you're still meeting them.
Thank you so much for that answer, Dave. Our next question is for Kevin here. You're roughly 60% through remediation and had an assessment plan before the pause. What's your recommendation to a peer who's asking whether they should pause?
I think really it's remembering why you got into this in the first place. And I'm guessing those reasons that you first are going down this path haven't really changed at all. For us, it was, we're already doing federal work. We know that CMMC is coming. We're going to start seeing it on our contracts. We need to do this, and that still hasn't changed. That maybe the date will change when those contracts will start saying you need to be CMMC Level 2 certified. To even look at the contract, let alone win it. The date's been pushed back, but it's still the same thing. We still are charging forward. We know that's something we need to do, and that's why we're going down this road. And I think, it's easy to, gosh, we've been doing this for over a year now. Just, say, hey, step back, and you get so buried in the minutia that you stop and you forget why you were doing it in the first place. But if you step back, look at the whole big picture, and realize, oh, we still need to do this. It's important to keep moving forward. I think that'd be my recommendation to everyone else, is just to go through that process. And it maybe the reasons have changed. Maybe if your business isn't going after the same contracts you were when you started it, maybe that is a chance to stop and wait. But I feel like, that most people probably need to keep moving forward.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that answer, Kevin.
No problem.
James, you completed your certification before the pause. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell a company that just decided to wait?
Yeah, well, I would say that don't wait last minute. the process that I went through, it turned out to be a lot more extensive than what I ever expected. You know, having the documentation necessary and so forth, the technical implementations, the processes and the procedures, it was overwhelming. So, you know, given, you know, there is this, I would say, luxury of a pause, whatever the DOW eventually comes up with, you know, as Sunny mentioned, you know, the requirements are probably not going to change. Maybe the process or the procedure, how it's done, but, you know, we are going to be required to protect CUI. And so, you know, save yourself a lot of stress, you know, take this pause as an opportunity to move forward at maybe at a good pace, to kind of, you know, not do what I did and have to just have many sleepless nights trying to understand, you know, I'm not a CMMC expert, trying to understand what the requirements are, having many questions, you know, so I definitely feel that where we are at now, we do have a competitive advantage because it does, you know, it demonstrates cybersecurity maturity and readiness and so forth. And, you know, if the primes in the future are going to start requiring subcontractors to be CMMC compliant, you know, they can do that even outside of what the DOW mandates, you know, we'd be ready. So take this opportunity and this time to start working on examining your process, your procedures, getting documentation in place. Definitely be beneficial.
Thank you, James.
Yeah,
David, do you want to add
that's a
something?
great answer, James. Yeah, if I can just add on top of that. So two things. One, I think reevaluating your scope is a good exercise that it makes sense for everybody to go through, right? And scope is something that is really tough to drill down because we all work with so many different tools and technologies. We do, you know, a lot of us are doing work on the commercial side and the government side. A lot of us are subcontractors to primes, right? And sometimes primes will include relevant DFARS clauses. Sometimes they won't, right? But it actually should be a flow down from the prime contract that you have. So there is an opportunity to just reevaluate the entire scope, what needs to be included or excluded from that, because, you know, scoping is an endeavor that if you over scope, right, you are just spending way more money than you need to. If you're under scoping, right, then you can't get through the actual process of getting certified or getting an accurate self-attestation out there, right? So I think that is a valuable effort everybody should work through. And the other piece that James hit on, which I think is really, really important, is the competitive advantage, right? So I know a lot of us are subs to these bigger primes, and when you can say, you know, we are certified as opposed to somebody else who's not certified and just put the entire program on pause, you know, think about how that's going to be viewed from the prime, right? Because the prime takes on liability from the subs that they work with. And even if you're not certified, right, but you still have a plan in place for meeting the requirements, right? And you still have a POEM that's actively being worked on and your scores getting updated as you implement additional controls for the program. Again, it just looks really favorable from the prime's perspective, and I think, you know, there are opportunities to set yourself apart there from people who just put everything on pause.
Thank you for that, Dave. Kevin, you're up again. You're in the hot seat. Walk us through the actual conversation with leadership when the pause hit. Did anyone ask you to suspend? How did you make the case either way?
Okay, so that was my first reaction when I heard this was coming. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to talk to all my leadership into this all over again. And it wasn't within 24 hours. I got an email from all the people I was expecting to have to talk into this again, and said, hey, emails were all, hey, I heard CMMC is pausing. Can we stop? But then every single one of them, it was a quick email. No, we need to keep going, and they were all in like right away. And so, it's been a year-long journey walking through all this with all of them, and it has been difficult. And we've had to compromise on a few things as far as budget and everything else. But at this point, we're 60% along the way. They're still committed and all in, and that went a lot easier than I thought it was going to go, for sure.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed with I've had the opportunity to work with GBA and their team is the organizational change management there. Like you guys have done a pristine job of communicating what changes are coming. You're bringing that down the pipe. You're getting buy-in from your leadership and getting that circle of trust. So one thing to kind of know is that that's what is making your CMC experience so successful. It's not just compliance. It's not just funding. It's, adoption and buy-in from all the people on your team. So
Yeah. Well, and not only that, but again, to reiterate what David said earlier, we actually are taking this time and this pause to reevaluate our scope, and we're actually expanding the scope quite a bit. We're going to provide a lot more seats than we were planning on originally, just to handle additional work that we think is coming in soon. And again, work comes and goes, and that's kind of a moving target that we have to hit. But we are again taking that opportunity, and again, Luvionic has a very similar project management philosophy that we do, so we gel really well that way, and that they've been handling that change very well as well, and have rolled with those punches, and I again appreciate that about you all, Luvionic.
Yeah, one more piece to add on top of that is the verbiage that has come down from the pause, right? I've seen some emails back and forth, or some emails from executive leaders that say, "Oh, it's canceled," right? And nothing has ever been canceled. That word has never been used, right? And that is very intentional from the Department of War. Everything is paused. Right, so it is going to come back. Right, there may be a slight change in the actual certification process. So we don't know that yet, but it's not, nothing is canceled. And, just don't go down that rabbit hole, because you're going to put yourself in bad shape when it does come back around.
That's wishful thinking, not
Yes,
having
it
to
is.
spend as much money. That's not how anything in the world works.
that's great. I like that. All right. So Dave, you're next here with the question. What's one mistake you're seeing contractors make right now because they misunderstand what the pause actually means?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we've already talked about, right? Either saying, "Hey, let's just stop anything that we're doing until we know more information." That is wrong, because we still know that DFAR 7012 is a requirement. We still know that implementing all of the requirements from NIST 171 is part of that DFARS clause. So stopping implementing NIST 171, which is CMMC Level 2, is a bad strategy to take, because again, that requirement has not changed or has not been paused, right? The only thing that's been paused is the actual C3PAO certification, external certification. So pausing on what you were doing is not the right way, right thing to do. And I would think, let me see one more. I think your Spurs submission as well. So I have seen, some people just not wanting to worry about Spurs or their accurate Spurs score. And again, that requirement hasn't gone away, hasn't changed. So making sure your Spurs score is accurate is vital, because the DIBCAC audits, right, are not slowing down. If anything, they are increasing at this stage. So making sure that's accurate and defensible with an SSP POAM is still vitally important.
Very good. And then the next question is for you, James. Life after certification, what's actually different day to day, and has it changed any conversations with your primes or your customers?
Yeah, so day to day, now that we have policies and procedures in place, it's about following those policies and procedures. Having whether it's scheduled reviews, whether it's training, whether it's controlling baselines against our CUI assets, whether it's having a patch schedule, documenting any changes and so forth. I mean, it's additional work on my end. However, it does enhance and keep, things running better. I feel a lot better about our security stance. I feel a lot better, things aren't just ephemeral now. There's an understanding that there is a process, there is a procedure, and we can follow it, and it's documented. Keeping those records and so forth. Now, as far as conversations with primes and customers, I don't really interact directly with the primes or customers, but our program management, they do. And, I've heard very positively, that the fact that we are certified, that it no longer is a question, that from our primes or customers, that they, feel that it's certainly a benefit in our interaction with them and even attracting new business. So that's kind of how things have been since certification.
Wonderful. Okay, so I want to remind you that if you wanted to ask the panel members any questions, you can jot those in the chat. In the meantime, I do have a couple more questions, but if your questions come in and they're better than mine, I will switch to yours. So the chat is open for that. So make sure that if you have any pressing questions, you just drop them in there. All right, Kevin, one more question for you. What would it cost you to stop now and restart later? And what risks did you see in slowing down?
Well, I think the biggest risk in slowing down is, I mean, I'm guessing most people that are on this call are in the same place. I'm in charge of the task force on CMMC because I was stupid enough to ask the question, "Hey, what are we doing about CMMC?" We're all
So
busy.
you're saying don't ask the question you don't want to know the answer to? Got it.
If you don't learn anything else from this, don't ask the question because you will get stuck leading the task force. But we're all busy. We all have really important things to do, and but I know if we stopped, if we paused, we would totally lose all of our momentum. I'd go back to doing my daily job. Our IT department has plenty of other things to do, and we would just be stuck and frozen with as far as we've gotten to this point. And I've been at GBA for long enough to see training platforms started and created, and then all of a sudden we get busy and they just get dropped and left and then never actually follow through. I've seen that multiple times, and this would just be another one of those things. So that's why we're pushing forward. We want to see this through. It's important to see this through. We're going to lose business if we don't see this through. And that's the approach that we have to have just based on previous experience. So
Awesome. Great answer. Thank you for that.
no problem.
And then your question, James, what do you know now that you wish you'd have known when you started? I know you alluded to some things, but maybe there's something, that really just stands out to you that you could share with us.
A couple of things, actually. One word, documentation. There's a lot of documentation. So keep that in mind as you start this process, that you're going to have everything documented. And it's, there's going to be definitely some scrutiny if you move to obtain certification. So get a head start on documentation, ask questions, really look into, get some clarity on some things so that moving forward, you can feel confident, when you go through an assessment process. Also, I would say that, we decided to move forward with having a pre or gap assessment. And don't wait too long to do that. If you're contemplating whether it's valuable or not, it's extremely valuable. It really helped answer a lot of questions. It helped guide, for implementation. And Dave specifically kind of helped us quite a bit. And he even sat in during the assessment to answer any questions, to be available if the assessor happened to bring anything up. So those two things, documentation, any sort of gap assessment or pre-assessment, it's very, very beneficial.
Great answer. Thank you so much for that, Kevin. The question here from Michael Sloan, I love this, and I would love, Dave, if you're able to take this. Speaking of task force, for future planning purposes, what is the average size and hours dedicated per week to CMMC for a small to medium-sized business while preparing? And then what is the average size and hours dedicated after the compliance audit?
Yeah, so I'll take a stab at this. Thanks for the question, Michael. And first off, it varies, greatly on the size of your team, the size of your enclave, which sort of goes back to the scoping and everything that's included with that. But initially what you have to do, right, with scoping is understanding everything that needs to be a part of this enclave. That includes, how many personnel, what devices, what applications do you need or not need, right? So that is a discussion that involves legal and contracts and HR and everything like that. And then it's actually working through a gap assessment, right? So CMMC is a large effort. There are 110 controls, but there are 320 assessment objectives that have to be met, right? That includes documentation, that includes technical implementation, that includes artifact gathering, and SSP writing, POAMs for outstanding controls, and everything like that. So there has to be at a minimum, I would say multiple dedicated technical working sessions per week to understand the technical scope, right? What you have, what you don't have. If you're working within a Microsoft ecosystem, what licenses do you have? Does that include, Intune and Defender and logging and monitoring for your system? Do you want to look at different external service providers, or a SOC to help with incident reporting or logging, monitoring, etc.? So when you are evaluating that, it depends, how much you can take internally to how much needs to be actually outsourced, right? Because a lot of the controls can not be fully implemented, but can take some load off of your team, right? If you have an external SOC that is handling some of that, or an external managed service provider, etc. So once you evaluate your availability, it depends how much you can handle internal and then external. For the second part of that question, right, after the audit, right, compliance is an ongoing endeavor. So us internal here at Alivionic, we actually are doing compliance work every single month for our compliance program, and we were CMMC Level 2 certified last year, 2025. So every month we take a CMMC domain, and work through updating our artifacts, our evidence. Is our policy, still accurate? Is our SSP still indicative of what we're doing and who's managing these controls? And naturally it takes less time to manage the program once you get it in a good place. So most of the work is up front, but this isn't something that we would recommend you just do, once a year, because it's so easy for things to fall by the wayside. So you need to have teams that are available to continuously work through not only the compliance program, but also just the management of what being certified entails, right? Logging and monitoring devices, ensuring your firewall is still adequate and in place. You have the correct tools in place to get the job done. Your current contracts are still applicable. Are you pursuing new contracts that have different requirements? And so it's easy to see and understand how this can expand out. So you got to have people ready for that.
Thank you. You answered that so thoroughly. Really appreciate it. Kevin, do you want to add something?
Yeah, no, definitely. I can tell
for it.
you from our task force. So we have two different business interests that need the CMMC. Both the GBA industrial group needs it, and then our GBA builders group needs it. So we had a representative from each of those. I had another technical member on my team that knows a lot about Revit. For those of you who know anything about architecture and engineering, that's pretty key. And then we had two IT people on our just specific CMMC task force. And then we had a larger group that meets on a less regular basis that is more of our leadership, just keeping them in the loop. So I'd say there's 5 that are doing most of the work, and another 5 that have some oversight responsibilities that are on the task force. I think the 3 of us that are non-IT probably do 5 to 10 hours of CMMC a week when we're actually doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is probably why it's taken our group as long as it has to get ready for CMMC. And then our IT team is, they're probably more than half time working on it. So just to give you an idea of as a mid-sized company, what it is that we've been doing.
Wonderful. And then here at Luvionic, just so you all are aware, we work with, all size companies, and some of the companies we work with also have IT that's outsourced so that they have part of their task force. So we include them. We're comfortable working with them as well, if that's your setup. Question for James. Thank you, Bobby Padilla, for your questions. What were your biggest challenges in achieving CMMC Level 2 certification? So now you've gone through it, what was that really big hiccup or the big one that you were, kind of worried about?
Time. I didn't anticipate really how much time it would take, how much effort. And interestingly enough, I actually had to push out our assessment twice. Luckily, our C3PAO was very flexible. At that time, they were doing more pre-assessments, and they had flexibility in their schedule. So I had to push it out 30 days the first time and another 30 days the second time, just to make sure that
for readiness sake,
my ducks in a row. Excuse me?
Okay. For readiness sake?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I didn't want to go into the assessment not feeling fully confident, still having questions and so forth. And part of that was being able to integrate a pre-assessment. So that helped me to go into it with confidence. So really, now that you have time, I would say, move forward. Don't procrastinate. I feel like I procrastinated. Again, having to have pushed it just put more stress on me than really it should have been. So that was.
Well, I appreciate your transparency. Thank you for that candid response. I do think that many people are probably in your same boat. And the next question is for Kevin. What has been your biggest challenge thus far in your CMMC compliance journey?
Time has definitely been one challenge, but I think the biggest challenge, the thing that I didn't expect, was just how poorly our IT department understood what it is we actually do, and how poorly our people on the ground that are actually doing things understood the IT requirements, that the things that were important to IT. So we've had some major misses during our process that set us back quite a ways, because our IT department didn't understand what we were telling them, even though we were telling them over and over and over again. And there were some times where our IT department was telling us things that we just didn't understand. And so I think we've had to back up a couple times and just go back to the very basics and explain the business, and have our IT people explain, okay, what is CMMC and why is it important? And if we would have had that discussion early on, we would have been a lot better off. But honestly, we all thought we were speaking the same language, and we really weren't.
That's a great lessons learned. I think anyone that's currently considering going into CMMC remediation and readiness, if you're in that, I think that's really good to just have those conversations up front. Of here's what the expectation is. It's almost like creating a project charter within your own little subset of people, so you understand exactly what you're expecting from each other. Very, very good answer. I appreciate that. And Dave, I did have another question for you. You recently earned your CCA certification. What does having a certified assessor on the readiness team change for a client? What does that mean for someone like GBA?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I think that there are a few things. So first is how I approach what is actually sufficient to meet the controls, right? So we, as a certified assessor, right, and just going through that training and everything, there are a few things that actually will satisfy a control. And it's not only having, the correct tool in place. It's not only having the correct configuration, it's about proving it, and it's about having the documentation that matches up with what is actually implemented, right? So from our perspective, it's called sufficiency and adequacy, and you need to have adequate evidence, means the right type of evidence for what the control is asking for, and sufficiency means the enough of the right type of evidence. So, before you could just, I would look at something from the perspective of, oh, okay, like that configuration makes sense to satisfy this control, we can go ahead and move on. And now it's, hey, that implementation makes sense, but now we have to capture evidence in a way that can then be tracked and then proved to an assessor, and documentation that matches and brings everything together in one nice package. So that's the first aspect of it. And secondly, I changed, I think, how I actually help prepare companies for their assessment, right? So there are a lot of CCAs in the ecosystem, and everybody goes through the same, training, and you would hope that everybody conducts their assessments the same way, but that's not always the case, right? So I've run into a few scenarios where maybe the lead assessor is asking for questions that may be a little bit beyond what the control is actually asking for, right? And so I now, when I take clients close to their assessment date, will make sure they understand every control and specifically what we need to satisfy it, so that they don't have an assessor going a little bit out of bounds, asking for maybe more than what's required. Or let me give you an example. For CMMC and NIST 171 Rev 2, it doesn't have any guidelines for, how often you need to conduct periodic log reviews, or how strong your password policy has to be, right? It just says you have to have one and it has to be documented. So if you have a password policy that's 8 characters, it needs an upper lowercase special character. You have it documented that way in your policy. You have it configured that way inside your environment. That satisfies the control, right? So if an assessor comes in and says, "Oh, it's only 8 characters, I want it to be 12 or 14," if you are not intimately familiar with the control, what is and is not enough, you could say, "Oh, okay, I need to fix that," or maybe an assessor would call that a deficiency when it's not. So from my side of preparing clients, I make sure they understand, if an assessor tries to tell you, that your password policy isn't strong enough, go back to the actual documentation for the control from the official CMMC guidance, and say, what I have done to satisfy the control because of the verbiage here. So training clients on understanding what is enough and is not enough, I think, has been really helpful to ensure everybody is not only being compliant, but ensure that the assessor doesn't take things a little bit too far.
Awesome. Great answer. We had another really good question here. This will be our final question before we wrap, but I wanted to make sure we got this. This is really good. This is for James from Alvin Sanders. We are a small team with only a small group of users that fall into CMMC/ITAR scope. Did you go with an enclave, or did you go with a GCC high whole tenant move?
Yes, very good question. One that I had to address early on. When I first brought up CMMC NIST compliance to the company owner, he said, "Well, why don't we just get the whole company under compliance?" So you can imagine what I had to explain to him, just the cost and the effort to do that. So we were able to narrow it down to, just 8 users that would fall into scope. And given that, we went with an enclave solution. So, we use Prevail, and because there are a lot of things that are satisfied within the enclave, that, you know, we can satisfy any of a very good amount of the controls just for that. It helped a lot. You know, it helped because a lot of documentation already existed for that. The use of our individuals in the exchange of CUI data, it could be narrowed down to within the enclave and puts a lot of other things out of scope. So we went that route. You know, that could change in the future depending on what our requirements are, if our architecture changes, if there's separate data that we need to process, but that's what worked for us.
Thank you for that. Really do appreciate that answer. All right, and it looks like we have one more. He said that's exactly what he was thinking, so thank you. So look at that, James. You did your service for today.
Going home.
Well, I wanted to thank our panel members one more time. I am very grateful for you all giving up your time, preparing, and being here with us. Again, Kevin with GBA, James with Southeast Aerospace, and my colleague Dave. We thank you all for your time. I wanted to make sure I brought up our little PDU code here for you. I'm going to try one more poll. Let's see if it works. Looks like it's open. So you should be seeing what's your biggest CMMC challenge right now. It is open text. So if you're able to just kind of type that in, that just kind of helps us understand how we can best help our customers. So if you have, you know, a few minutes and you don't mind dropping that in, we'd really appreciate it. Awesome. Okay. And lastly here, so a quick reminder from Alluvionic. The fewer C3PAO assessments doesn't mean less scrutiny. It means different scrutiny. So the likelier outcome is that DIPCAC is auditing more organizations directly. And so self-attestation that doesn't hold up is far costlier than readiness work you've done anyways. So just something to keep in mind. I'm going to go ahead and move our screen over to our PDU here for you guys for a second. But before we leave, I want to share the QR code one more time in case you did want to schedule 20 minutes and chat with us. Again, this is no obligation, just 20 minutes to just chat about, you know, what we've already chatted today. Like, what is the most high value, low cost work you could be doing during this pause, and answer any questions you might have, like Alvin, for instance, any questions like that, where we could set some time up with us and with Dave if needed. So look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you so much again for taking the time. We look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Take care.